Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel. I do cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, all sorts of Disney themed content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. This year I was hoping to share a bunch of cookie recipes leading up to the holidays, and so I'm calling this 12 Days of Cookies. Kind of a twist on my 12 Days of Vlogmas series that I did last year. I'll post that playlist up here. But this time I'm interspersing 12 different cookie recipes throughout Vlogmas, which is also going to be made up of, you guessed it, vlogs, but also hauls and other little bits and pieces that I'm putting together to try to make up a more complete Vlogmas. I'm not saying I'm gonna do all 25 days, but here's hoping that this gets me at least halfway there, right? So for today's recipe, I wanted to share something super simple, but still very impressive looking and definitely a crowd pleaser. I'm going to show you how I made chocolate sprinkle cookies, but using a cake mix as a base. Now, you could use a cake mix. That's kind of what the recipe was written for, but I didn't have cake mix on hand, and I'm very much use what you got. So I actually ended up using a brownie mix for the base of these cookies, and they were fantastic. They were nice and thin and crunchy, but the inside was all gooey and like, imagine a brownie in cookie form, basically. So good. And the texture from the sprinkles, amazing. 10 out of 10. I loved the cookies. My nephews loved the cookies. And everybody that tried them really enjoyed them in spite of the fact that they're gluten and dairy free. Yep, you guessed it. If you're on my channel, you already know I eat gluten and dairy free exclusively, and as such, most of my recipes are gluten and dairy free. In fact, I think it's been years since I've shared a not gluten or dairy free recipe on this channel. And I always enjoy the recipes that I share on here. I wouldn't share a recipe if I didn't love it. And if I don't love it, I make sure to let you know that, and I let you know why as well, so you can make any changes you might need to. But the biggest praise, the highest praise that I can expect for my food is when somebody that does not eat gluten and dairy free really enjoys it in spite of the allergy friendly adjustments I might have to make. And this recipe definitely fit that bill. So with all that being said, let's jump into our super simple chocolate sprinkle cake mix cookies. Alright pallies, so today's cookie is going to be a gluten-free chocolate cake mix cookie. I have made cake mix cookies in the past on my channel. I'm going to post that video in the description box and also up here in the corner right there. This is going to be a little bit different because it's going to be my very first time making a gluten-free cake mix based cookie, and also it's even more of an experiment because I didn't have cake mix on hand, but I did have brownie mix, and obviously that's going to give us potentially a little bit of a different texture, but we're going to try it all the same and hope for the best. You can't go wrong. Maybe it won't bake up exactly as we expect, but it's going to be delicious either way. So I am ready to move forward if you are. For our recipe today, we're going to use 2 eggs. If you'd like to make this recipe entirely vegan, you could substitute flax eggs or use whatever your favorite vegan egg replacement might be, but you're going to need the equivalent of 2 eggs. We're going to use 1/4 cup of avocado oil. You could also use in its stead melted butter if you don't mind it being full of dairy, or you could use melted coconut oil as well. I'm going to be using avocado oil because I have it on hand. Basically, you just want 1/4 cup of something neutral tasting and liquid. 1 box of chocolate cake mix, whatever your go-to cake mix is. I'm going to be using the King Arthur gluten-free ultimate fudge brownie mix, so your mileage may vary, but that's what I'm going with today. 1/4 cup of almond flour. Make sure you get the super fine kind because you don't want any coarse bits in your batter. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. This one is actually labeled a gluten-free product. Apparently some baking powders are not gluten-free, so keep an eye out if that's something important to you. We have sprinkles. We're using nice Christmassy sprinkles today. These do contain soy. Unfortunately, a lot of sprinkles do. So for today, we're making the exception. I'm sure there are companies that make soy-free sprinkles. I'll actually have some linked down below. But this is what I had, so this is what I'm going to use today. We don't avoid soy as stringently as we avoid gluten and dairy in our household, so for us this is all right. And then optionally, but we are going to in fact go with that option, we're going to use some white chocolate chips to mix into our cookies. You could use regular chocolate chips, you could use butterscotch chips, whatever you like and whatever fits your lifestyle, allergies, etc. But I really love the Enjoy Life brand because they are free of, I think, 14 of the top allergens. And it's made in a nut-free and gluten-free facility. There's no dairy in these. And I'm using white chocolate chips today because I think that the flavor, the color is going to make a nice contrast with our extra fudgy cookies today. So this is actually going to come together really easily and really quickly. What you do have to keep in mind is that these cookies will need to rest in the refrigerator for about 40 minutes total before they're ready to bake. Otherwise, they're going to spread too much and not maintain their cookie form. So with that in mind, make sure you allow yourself, I'd say about an hour beginning to end for this cookie recipe. But we're going to take a large bowl and I'm going to mix together my eggs and my 1/4 cup of oil, coconut oil, butter, whatever it is that you're using. Now I'm just going to take a fork and beat all that together to break up the eggs. And now in this same bowl, I'm going to put in my 1/4 cup of almond flour, my teaspoon of baking powder, and my entire box of cake mix, or in my case, brownie mix. We're going to mix all these things together until they are fully combined. And just for reference, because you might not be using the exact same mix I am, this is a 17-ounce box of cake mix, brownie mix, what have you. And so I'm going to show you once this is all combined what the texture is looking like for me. If you're using a 15-ounce box, obviously that might look a little different for you. Yours is going to be a little wetter. If you're using an even bigger box than 17 ounces, then yours is going to be a little drier. You might need to add some more oil. Mine's actually looking a little dry, so I might get in here with my hands to try to get it to come together as a proper dough. So I want to make sure every bit of mix has an opportunity to come in contact with some of our wet ingredients. Clean hands, of course. Make sure you wash your hands before and after you do this. So I'm just basically trying to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl into my little ball of dough here and try to make it as cohesive as possible. And it seems to be coming together quite nicely. As you can see, that's very much a dough. I would not call that a batter at all. It's definitely a dough. I think while it's still kind of soft and pliable, because after this we're going to put it into the fridge for the first time, I think now is when I'm going to go ahead and mix in my chocolate chips. So I'm going ahead and adding about 6 tablespoons of chocolate chips. I feel like for this amount of dough that's going to be more than enough. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take my little silicone spoon, but I'm also going to spray it with just a touch of this avocado oil spray so that it doesn't stick. And I'm going to use this to incorporate these guys. Yeah, unfortunately, because the recipe counts the chocolate chips as optional, the written recipe I'm following doesn't tell you when you should put the chocolate chips in. Because in theory, you might not be using them at all. So maybe this would have been easier if I'd done it before incorporating everything. But all things considered, I think we got this pretty well incorporated, and that seems to be a good distribution of chips throughout. So now that our dough is prepared, I'm going to put this into the refrigerator for 10 minutes. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes and I've got a baking sheet here lined with parchment. I also put some of my sprinkles into this little bowl here off to one side. I'm going to take my dough out of the fridge. And now we're going to turn this big ball of dough into 12 smaller balls of dough. So I happen to have a little cookie scooper situation. I will put this particular one in the description box below in case you want your own. But when it comes right down to it, I'm not going to rely on this for actually shaping. I just want to use it to help keep the dough balls somewhat uniform in size. I'm going to dole them out and then roll them up myself into their little spherical shapes. And once I've done all 12, then I'm going to come back around and I'm going to roll each dough ball in my little bowl of sprinkles so that it is completely encrusted on all sides by our fun little Christmas sprinkles. And of course, you can do this for all sorts of holidays or events. Just use different sprinkles, right? Different theme, different colors. You could use this for birthdays. And this is a typical cake mix recipe, so you don't even necessarily have to use chocolate. You can use a white or yellow cake mix and use like colorful sprinkles to make like a confetti. You could even use funfetti, honestly, cake mix. You can use strawberry cake. So the flavor combinations are endless. It's just up to you and your imagination to see what you can come up with. But this should be a nice base recipe to get that going for you. As I'm working with the dough, you can see that these later ones are actually starting to dirty up my hands. So keeping them cold while you work is important because that's going to make the difference. As far as them holding their shape, this one was a little too big. And actually, maybe I'm using a bigger cake mix than the original recipe maker intended, because these are my 12 dough balls here. And I could still probably make a 13th cookie. I don't know if I have space to bake it off, but I definitely have the dough. So I'm gonna give it its chance, right? Actually, I could even probably make 14 cookies, to be honest, because that looks a little big. So that's 13 and that's 14. Again, your mileage may vary. Maybe you want to make bigger cookies. Maybe you're using a cake mix box that's a little smaller. I was going to wash my hands, but there's no sense because now I'm going to come in anyways and I'm going to roll these guys in the sprinkles. And this is going to make a fun sort of crinkle cookie effect. So even though the sprinkles are all over the cookie, as it bakes, the cookies are kind of going to break through the sprinkle crust, giving it its fun signature crinkle cookie look. I'm actually going to need to pour some more sprinkles out here because I don't think I have enough in this bowl for everyone that's left. I didn't think I'd use up all the sprinkles, but it looks like, I mean, granted, I didn't start with a whole container of sprinkles, but it looks like actually some of these cookies might end up being sprinkle-less, which will be fine because we'll treat those kind of as an experiment and see what texture we prefer. Yeah, with that, I'm officially out of sprinkles, ladies and germs. So I'm going to put these back in the refrigerator now, and these are going to sit chilling for 30 minutes before we bring them back out to bake them. Don't skip that step. It's super important in order for them to keep their shape. I'm going to see if I find a second pan so that I can space these out better when it comes time to actually bake, because I have a feeling they're going to spread and this is going to turn into a sheet cake situation real quick if I leave them spaced out like this. But they're going to chill in the fridge for 30 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees. But when they're ready to come out and bake, obviously on their two separate pans, they're going to bake in that 350 degree oven for 12 to 14 minutes. I'm going to allow them to cool so that they kind of set up, and then they should be ready to enjoy. Alright friends, there you have it. That's my cookie of the day. I really hope you enjoyed the recipe. I know my family definitely did. Before you go, please let me know what your favorite holiday cookie is. And keep your eyes peeled because maybe I'm making an allergy-friendly version of it this year, and if I'm not, I'll definitely keep it in mind for next year. I want to thank you all so much for being here and watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click that notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Happy holidays!